So do y'all remember that part where I said I was gonna do death metal vocals for the big, like, end of the line Kineticist feats? I was thinking about it. I think I'm gonna hold off till they're good. Honestly, what's going on, y'all? My name is Tommy. Welcome back to the channel. Nevertheless, we persist one more time with the dual gate Kineticist. If you're liking what you're seeing, like, subscribe, ding the bell. I shouldn't have cracked my knuckles before I recorded this. One day I'll learn. Stay caught up on all your stuff. Join us on Patreon. You can get Google Sheets for too many builds. Join us in games and a bunch of other fun shit. But for now, let's dive in. Okie dokie. So this one is gonna get fucking wild. There's no other way to say this, I think. I'm beginning to learn when I take some time off the way my brain will make ideas after. It's real fucking good. Bad news first, though. The bad news is I will not be screaming death metal vocals into this microphone to pronounce some of these high-level Kineticist feats, because really the big over-the-top ones just don't keep up with anybody else who could do similar magically currently. I know that this discussion has happened in several different places and it's the common discourse, but if I'm the first one you're hearing it from, if we compare All Shall End in Flames to a fireball cast by a wizard of equivalent level before any other shenanigans that one might add one side or the other, the 18d6 the spellcaster got will average to 63 and the 7d10 will average to 38. Which is an incredibly high gulf to climb over that I think you really just can't. And even if the Kineticist can do this reliably over and over and over again, that's only good if by the time you're getting this, you're having breakneck encounters over and over and over again, which in turn becomes bad on the spellcasters because in the long game, they can't hang with something like that, you know? So we're not taking them today. Instead, we will continue to lean into what the Kineticist is really good at, and that's tech abilities. Pyrokinesis in particular does some pretty neat debuff stuff, some pretty neat mobility stuff. Truly, I thought we would see a lot more big over-the-top damage things, and I guess post-playtest we will, but there are a lot of pre-existing things in 2nd edition that play really well with the ability to make fire, and so we're leaning in real hard. I'm going to take some of this out of order today because I think without the explanation it doesn't make a lot of sense. So today it's a Goblin Ifrit. We're playing a Goblin primarily because, well, I've been singing Goblin songs since like 2014. So if I'm going to make big fire, I got to do it. And to highlight something that I realized the playtest has missed over, specifically our first ancestry feat, Burn It. Burn It lets spells and alchemical items that deal fire damage gain a status bonus to damage equal to half the spell's level or 1/4 the item's level, with a +1 status bonus to any persistent fire damage you deal. Everything the Kineticist does is magical, but strictly isn't spells, so doesn't interact with this. And that interaction not working feels really bad, right? It's like when the Anati came out and they had to print an errata to the effect of, yeah, you can open doors, don't worry. In much the same way, A, because Pyrokinesis, nay the Kineticist at large, doesn't do as much damage as other classes. B, it makes a boatload of narrative sense for an ancestry feat that lets the Goblin Primal Sorcerer or the Goblin Alchemist get buffs to their fire damage to also work to the Goblin who has an internal gate to the plane of fire within them. I'm hoping when Rage of Elements comes out, there will either be a Goblin Ancestry feat for this, or like maybe this feat gets eroded. Even if it doesn't, this seems more than reasonable to allow at tables. So I'm going to suggest that you do as well. So we're going to be taking it. The Ifrit heritage is where the secret sauce comes in. While a Kineticist has their element gathered, they gain resistance equal to their level to damage from a source that has that trait. An Ifrit has resistance to fire equal to half their level all the time. They also have a really cool feat that interacts when they take fire damage, even if they resist all of it, Heat Wave. Once per short rest, essentially. If an effect would deal fire damage to you, even if you resisted all of it, you gain concealment until the beginning of your next turn. Remember that part where we said that the Kineticist's damage is kind of middling and sad? Yeah, me too. It feels slightly less bad if on top of that, you also can get concealment when then everyone starts attacking you after. It makes you tanky as hell. Consider Flame Eruption. Consider the very first method of pyromania that we can get up to. A 5 feet in diameter and 30 feet high cylinder, which deals a d6 of fire damage on a basic reflex DC, and creates an area of hazardous terrain which might cause a creature to take a point of fire damage each time they move into one of those squares. So there are two universes here. On one hand, drop a flame eruption right on top of yourself. Point that grid intersection such that it hits the bad guy, and also you make your save. Hopefully don't critically succeed. I guess that would be weird. Resist the incoming damage, gain concealment. Or also something like make the flame eruption happen, stride through it, take damage, proc the reaction, proc a bunch of enemy reactions if you know they all have attack of opportunity, and then eat them with your concealment. Or, you know, just when everyone's shooting at the goblin that's setting everything on fire, have an out, you know? The Ifrit's Fire Sight ability should allow us to just fire through the fire to hit the guy on the other side of the fire if he's concealed by the fire. And Radiant Burst can throw down a dazzled or blinded debuff, which is huge on someone who is bringing their damage up to par by sneak attacking, because we're gonna do it assassin again. This is only once per day, but Solar Detonation from the Kineticist does a very similar thing, and things that get blinded can be sneak attacked much easier and are super debuffed for everyone else anyway. Hell, even if you're just throwing down concealment for everyone else, everyone liked that. That's really fucking cool. Then at the very end of it, Reckless Abandon from the Goblin to if you roll a failure or critical failure on a saving throw against a harmful effect, you get a success instead once per day on a free action. Drop a Solar Detonation, makes it literally impossible to run through fire and then regret it. Firesight gets really cool too when we consider the Pyrokineticist's ability to play with adapt elements, specifically the Proliferate action, causing an element to spread. If it's in an unoccupied square, it grows to fill that square. This might cause the square to become difficult terrain. Hazardous terrain creates damage equal to half your level, which the Ifrit resists innately, and it reacts to the environment naturally. So this won't work in every encounter, this won't work in every environment. If you're dungeon crawling, if you're not in a place you care about and don't want to set on fire, like, this isn't going to super work. But when I did the Ifrit Ancestry Anthology video and I saw this, the first thing I was thinking about was like burn season on the prairie and how much smoke can be generated and how fast fires can spread, especially when you can just do them. Give the Pyrokineticist like 2 minutes of setup time. See to it everybody in the party brings something that is very flammable, something, it depends on how much you want to get into this. Anything from like adventures that are happening in dry environments, or like if you have a base, make a kiln and dry out wood so it's very flammable, hay bales, the Cadenite's alcohol, however it shakes out for you. Generate a shitload of fire. Not only will that probably do a significant amount of damage, such that it causes the enemy to react or die to it, not only does that make a environment where you can succeed almost effortlessly. Pro tip, talk to your party on session 0. Make sure somebody can pass out resistance to fire. It's gonna be real fucking good. Then use Firesight to be able to see through the concealment you're making, and Heat Wave to grant it when you need to move away from it. Really, like an all Ifrit party that contains a Kineticist would be really fucking cool, and is my recommendation for this build and where to use it. Especially given the versatile heritages of 2nd edition, the way that shakes out, you could all show up and be very mechanically different. This feels like you're asking your party to take a versatile heritage and then both Heat Wave and Firesight. 3 pieces of the puzzle, which is in the grand scheme of things not a whole hell of a lot in return for the amount of value that could come out in return. That's terrifying. Anyway, once again, for our background, we will be taking Pyre Tender because we need it to qualify for Assassin ASAP as possible. For our starting ability scores, which I've hummed and hawed about a lot more than I usually do, I'm thinking the same as before. Strength 12, Dexterity 16, Constitution 18, Int Wiz 10, Charisma of 12. Anyway, for the class feats, the Dedicated Gate gets 3 bonus feats at level 1. Going in deep, Elemental Weapon once again to make a Flaming Dog Slicer, to shore up our damage with the Backstabber trait, to have something that's on brand for the being we are. For the bonus feats from our fire style, Burning Jet for 2 actions. Feels like a reference to the drugs of the Fallout universe. It'll make you jittery. Lets you stride up to 40 feet in a straight line. The movement doesn't trigger reaction. It's weird to me that this can't shoot you straight up, or at least until level 6, where this is 2 actions, move 60, or yeet yourself 40, or by 10, yeet yourself and then hover for a little while. For when you really gotta get up and move, you know? Particularly if you want to get up and move and not get bonked on the head way too much about it. Literally even gets around folks that might be readying to attack you if you move. That's hilarious. Eternal Torch is a weird one, but hear me out. It has a lot of cool uses. For 2 actions, you create a minute connection to your inner gate, choose a creature or thing you can touch, and cause it to emit a torch-like flame that either orbits it or emits from it. The flame has an unlimited duration. It is as bright and hot as a torch, but the flame can be any color you choose, and that's the big one. If the target is a weapon, it's still an improvised weapon if you want to hit with the fire. You can have a maximum number of Eternal Torches equal to your level. They can be dismissed individually regardless of location. By level 8, they shed light in a 60 and then 60 of dim radius. There is a world that exists where this build is the Scout. I think the dual gate that we made, and you know what, follow this card right up here, catch up, it was really fun. It does it significantly better. Sending back color-coded messages against beings that have no way to intuit that like purple fire shouldn't exist, or like blue fire might be will-o-wisps. It's a really good way to communicate information back to the party because the light could theoretically be seen in a dark environment for a long way. And against sentient opponents, if you make, say by level 5 Eternal Torches, which look like torches in such a way that, oh, you know, sentries or knights or whatever humanoid armed force might move away to investigate them, it can quickly turn a battle in your favor in a really cool and interesting way. We talked about Flame Eruption. We'll be taking it from level 1. At this point in the game, it's just a small AoE sometimes that we can cast in our own face and usually not hurt ourselves about, or hurt ourselves very little about, ultimately. Really, I didn't think about this till just this moment, but even if you're taking a little bit of scratch damage from your own abilities because you can't resist all of them, the sheer amount of con that a Kineticist has really helps eat into that in a very satisfying and good way. I like it. From 2nd level, we will grab an Elemental Familiar. I will probably make an Airbender who takes Beastmaster for an Ox that can fly, so we can all look at our groups and say, yip yip motherfucker, and then take off to the next adventure site. The Familiar uses your con to determine its Perception, Acrobatics, and Stealth modifiers though, so like it can keep up pretty damn reasonably. And having a friend to help out with things, everybody likes having a friend to help out with things. Molded to taste for whatever it is you need that day, you know? Really, the Elemental Familiar and the way the Familiar abilities interact, it's super interesting to me. A creature made from elemental matter springs forth and you decide, I'm gonna sculpt flaming wings out of you today, or hands that can manipulate things without setting them on fire. This begs the question, is this a fire source? Can you proliferate from your Familiar? Maybe. The Assassin Dedication again, next up. Deadly D6 on a Dog Slicer continues to tack on more damage and gets more fun stuff for us later. It's why I love Free Archetype. We can still take Kineticist things while doing this. Oh, right. Hey, we're using Free Archetype and will be for as long as I'm playing 2nd edition, and I won't do anything else because it's cool. Follow this card right up here. I will tell you why. At level 4, I really want to grab any of the auras on this build, but Warming Nimbus gives all creatures in your aura resistance to your level to damage of that type, which is usually fire, which not great when we want to do fire damage. And Desert Shimmer passing concealment out to the whole team is really cool, but if that also passes out concealment to the bad guys because they're standing in the aura, it's significantly less cool. I'm super hoping between the playtest and Rage of Elements coming out that these are changed such that the auras don't apply to both sides of the room, because as written, just literally unplayable. Unless you really need to pass out cold resistance, I guess. So in lieu of that, on our class feat side, we'll go ahead and grab Expert Backstabber from the Assassin archetype here to continue to pad our damage out. Surprise attack, of course, on the first round of combat. If you should roll stealth, please do all the time before initiative. Creatures that haven't acted are flat-footed to you to make Owie with Fire Sword do better. At level 6 for 1 action, we will grab Stoke Element if you can't use Burn It, because these are both status bonuses. But since Burn It will just outperform the hell out of this, if your GM is cool and will let you do that, instead grab Blast Barrage. For 2 actions, make up to 3 elemental blasts, each against a different target. The map applies normally on these strikes. Actually, no, wait, that's really good. If you rolled first on initiative and everyone's flat-footed to you and you just blast Barrage, start throwing sneak attack dice around in a really cool way. Especially with Sneak Attacker, because we got sneak attack at this level, haha! Solar Detonation comes online at level 8. a 20-foot burst within 60 feet of you that throws down 3d10 fire damage for 3 actions and can dazzle or blind your foes. After this, you'll need to regather your element and go again. If you catch yourself in this, the average of 3d10 is 7. You will resist 4 of this as an Ifrit god, which means if you rolled average and people passed their saves, they took 4 damage. That, not good. But again, we're fishing for the debuff here. Even if it's for a round, everyone is dazzled, this can help put the other classes farther ahead when they're swinging into flat checks and we're not, and god if you blind them. A critical failure basically ends the combat, which I think honestly, even with the lacking damage, makes that real cool. If you can hit a bunch of people on something that says if you roll poorly, you are unable to use your eyes for 10 rounds, that is an encounter ender. And then on the archetype feat side, you know that one-handed weapon that we're using, and we're not using a shield or anything in our offhand? Yeah, how's about the Duelist Detonation? Like I said, this is gonna feel a lot like the Dual Gate Kineticist, though instead of Assassinate or the Investigator who's sitting and waiting for the best Assassinate dice to quietly pick people off, I feel like the Pyromancer wants to be up front swinging a bunch. The dedication gives us quick draw. A cool GM might allow you to gather fire and then punch with your fire dog slicer for 1 action. I don't know if this works strictly rules as written, but like there are scarier things that do way more damage, clearly, so why not? And then chain blasts at level 10. For 2 actions, make a ranged elemental blast within the blast's first range increment. If it hits, attempt a new ranged elemental blast from the target against a different creature. That's within the first range increment of the creature that was hit, using the same map as the first hit. You can keep chaining the blast in this way each time you hit to a maximum of 5 total blasts. You can't target the same creature more than once. Each strike counts towards the map. Again, if you're going first and everyone is flat-footed, this is an interesting way to chain fire through a bunch of people's hit points and go out very far range-wise. The Kineticist is one of those classes that super benefits. If they can have big open battlefields, encounters that take place in forests or jungles, god, you will set one of those on fire and maybe the second one too. On the archetype feat side, Duelist Challenge. Pick a foe for after you're done multi-blasting everyone and there's 1 person left, or if there's 1 person you just want to focus down on. Anytime you hit that enemy using a single one-handed melee weapon while your other hand or hands are free, hi, Flaming Dog Slicer, you gain a circumstance bonus to the strike's damage equal to the number of damage dice your weapon deals. Hitting anyone else, you get a big circumstance penalty. And this makes this build super fucking modal. Imagine, if you will, there's a hideout that a bunch of horrible, terrible, very bad people on, say, like the plains of Katapesh start a nice cleansing fire, hashtag Hail Sarenrae, draw out a bunch of people, have your big multi-blasts for when the waves of little ones come out, or if you just really want to spread the damage in over-the-top ways, and then, when bigger threats, or honestly more squishier things, like things that you think might have lower HP, like casters, come down, challenge them, focus them into the ground, and then light them on fire and move to the next guy. It's tasty. At level 12, Furnace Form. For 2 actions, gives you the benefits of the Fiery Body spell until the end of your next turn. Fire elemental blasts add a die of their normal damage die instead of the 1d4. And whilst under this effect, you can gather element to gather fire as a free action at the start of your turn. From 16, the duration becomes a minute, and this becomes a little more value than it is now. As it stands, this is like, oh god, I'm cornered, Furnace Form, attack, get a little bit of extra damage with a little bit of resistance to precision. Here's hoping they don't have cold or water, and a little bit of fire damage done when creatures attack you with non-reach melee weapons or unarmed attacks. Because everyone needs a little bit of transmutation in their lives, right? That's what I thought. Then next, really quickly, so we can qualify out of Duelist and do some other stuff, Dueling Riposte. When a creature critically fails a strike against us, we stab them with our on-fire dog slicer, right? Easy enough. At level 14, we'll grab Horrid Ignition. For 2 actions, make a ranged fire elemental blast that does 3d6 persistent fire damage on top of our elemental blast, and the target is enfeebled 1 as long as it has the persistent damage. It's not as good as the debilitating injuries of the rogue, there are a few things that are, but it is a big dot. A dot that theoretically doubles if you crit them, and it's a debuff. It's a lot of things in one nice package. Bonus points if your witch friend gave them fire vulnerability beforehand. I think by level 13 and Radiant Burst being online, this build feels pretty done. It has all of the things you're looking for, and then everything else is kind of just gas. to grab onto. We'll grab the Fighter Dedication to grab some like staple class feats from the Fighter. Then on to 16, we'll grab Maelstrom Blast. For 3 actions, you either make a melee elemental blast against each enemy in the blast's melee reach, or whirlwind attack essentially, or make a ranged elemental blast against each enemy in a cone with a length equal to the blast's first range increment. Each attack counts towards the map, but you don't up the map until after you've nuked everyone with flying, flaming dog slicers. Man, that's the most goblin-ass shit I've ever said. That's dope. Again, one of the tools in the toolbox for, wow, they're all nice and lined up and flat-footed to me. Here we go, and then explode the hell out of them. Attack of Opportunity gives us a reaction. We're kind of reaction hungry, but after everything else is expended, and or if you'd rather chip damage in as opposed to get fire resistance, and that probably exists because you're manipulating the hell out of a lot of your reactions. Yeah, no, this seems great. Reaching way back next for Kindle Inner Flames. For 2 actions, target any number of willing creatures within 30 feet of you. Each of them sheds faint flying embers for a minute, gaining a +1 status bonus to reflex saves and acrobatics checks and a +10-foot status bonus to all their speeds. The next strike each target makes before the end of its next turn deals an additional 1d6 fire damage. By the time we get this has ticked up to +2 and 20. Like I said, feels like we've got everything we need, so why not here at the very end grab something to, hey, we need to rearrange. Everyone get a big buff to their speed. Everyone get a free pseudo-flaming rune. Right, feels pretty good to me. For the archetype feat, we'll grab Sudden Charge. Really, I think rogues should take this a lot. I think the name of the feat implies we're running straight at someone, screaming blood for the blood god and swinging a sword, but in reality, stride twice, strike once for 2 actions is a really good way to just make sure you have the speed to get the flank, right? Seems like a no-brainer that I wish I would have thought of earlier. At 20th level, Flawless Element. Choosing fire. Any impulses of that element we use that normally take 3 actions take only 2 to speed up our action economy a little bit, and combat reflexes from the fighter side for an extra reaction to stab people with our fire sword. And on the general feats, it's toughness, it's diehard, it's incredible initiative, it's fleet, it's canny acumen choosing your will save. It's probably going to be the same most of the time, but they bear repeating, you know? Okay, so this one's gone long. This one's gone super long, but I think it is really interesting. This will be the end of my Kineticist content from 2nd edition until Rage of Elements, probably. I haven't looked at the request line in a little while. I still need to make at least 2 Thaumaturge videos, maybe read that travel guide that I have. It's a good time to play Pathfinder, what can I say? But my takeaways from it are as follows. The damage definitely needs to be upped if we want something to be competitive with every other damage class, which I feel like we do, because the average Pathfinder table is throw damage at bad guy while bad guy throw damage at you. And while I enjoy tables that don't do that, or that have encounters that are a little more versatile, or just have more shit going on in them than we trade damage back and forth until one of us dies, every build that I've made has been just so tech-based. Didn't even touch any of the flex feats for this one, but they're definitely there, and they're there for really interesting, I don't even know what. Warming Nimbus to pass out fire resistance for the non-Ifrits in that party I was thinking about, maybe? I don't know. But both quad, single, and dual Kineticists can help parties achieve things that they couldn't within the bounds of their own spellcasting, within the bounds of their own abilities, and with a little bit of tweaking, and admittedly with free archetyping, which without, I think I would feel considerably different about this class with, but like, I know what I'm about. I know I use free archetype, and so we do. Can still, with making combat-based choices on that side, hang out in an appreciable, interesting, and meaningful way when it comes time to fight the bad guys and stuff. And I think that's really neat. It's from the crux of these really neat things that I think the coolest stories are told. And at this point in my tabletop role-playing game career, that's what I'm playing for. So yeah, no, very here for them. That's all the time I have for this one, though. What do y'all think? Have we got a chance to play Kineticists? Would you do anything differently? Why shouldn't Burn It stack, other than just quoting strict raw at me? Play devil's advocate down in the comments, please. Next week, I should probably look at that Thaumaturge thing that came out in Dark Archive. See what's going on there, maybe make a thing or two. But until then, y'all, thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.